On June 14th, 2021, aspiring urban explorer Jake Holloway uploaded a video to his YouTube channel. The title was simple: "We found something horrifying in an abandoned mine." At first, the footage seemed like any other exploration video. Jake and his two friends, Mark and Evan, had traveled deep into the Arizona desert to investigate the remains of the Dunidge silver mine, an operation that had been shut down in the 1960s after a series of cave-ins. With only headlamps and handheld cameras, the trio ventured into the darkness, excited but cautious. The first few minutes were filled with typical commentary, jokes about ghosts, warnings about unstable ground, and admiration for the untouched relics of the past. Rusting machinery, collapsed beams, and forgotten mining tools littered the tunnels. But about 15 minutes into the video, the atmosphere shifted. Jake panned his camera towards something lying in the dirt. A single sneaker, its laces still tied. Nearby, another shoe, this one half buried in sediment. "Yo, this is weird," Mark muttered. "Who leaves their shoes down here?" They pressed forward. More shoes appeared. Dozens. Piles of them, some decades old, others looking strangely new. The camera zoomed in on something else, a scattering of bones mixed into the pile. Small ones, too small to belong to an animal. A nervous chuckle from Evan. "Okay, now this is getting creepy." The tension grew thicker as they continued their descent. The air felt heavier, the silence deeper. And then they heard it. A sound low, rhythmic, almost like breathing. It echoed faintly through the tunnels, making it impossible to tell which direction it was coming from. The group stopped, listened. Their headlamps flickered slightly, though they blamed it on the dust. "Maybe it's wind," Jake whispered, though even he didn't sound convinced. The sound faded, but something else caught their attention. A narrow side tunnel, partially collapsed but still accessible. Evan hesitated, but Jake and Mark pushed forward. The tunnel was tighter here, forcing them to crouch as they moved. Their footsteps crunched against something brittle. More bones. But this time, they weren't scattered randomly. They were arranged, deliberately. A spine, rib cages, skulls too small to be human. Some were half buried in the sediment, others stacked in unsettling patterns along the walls. Mark backed away. "Dude, we should go." Jake's camera shook slightly in his hands. His breath had become shallow, unsteady. But then, in the dim glow of their headlamps, something shimmered against the rock ahead. A metal door. It looked modern, too modern for a mine abandoned in the 1960s. There was no handle, only a rusted keyhole and faded markings etched into the steel. The markings weren't in English. Evan reached out hesitantly, but before his fingers could make contact, the sound returned, louder and closer. The camera feed distorted for a moment, a brief flicker of static washing over the screen. And then a shadow moved at the edge of the frame. Something big, something wrong. Then chaos. The video blurred as they ran. The tunnel walls rushed past in shaky, frantic motion. Panting, curses, footsteps pounding against loose gravel. The sound pursued them, growing louder, until a sharp cut to black. And that's where the video ended. Jake never uploaded another video. His channel, once active, fell silent. No follow-ups, no explanations. And when people online tried to find the Dunidge silver mine on official records, it didn't exist. It was supposed to be another thrilling expedition. YouTubers Mark and Daniel, known for their extreme exploration channel Uncharted Depths, had spent years diving into abandoned structures, forgotten tunnels, and dangerous caves. This time, they had their sights set on the elusive Blackwell mine, a long-abandoned silver mine nestled deep in the Colorado Rockies. The mine had been sealed off decades ago due to structural instability and a series of unexplained disappearances. Rumors swirled about old miners vanishing without a trace, strange echoes heard at night, and locals warning visitors to stay away. But to Mark and Daniel, it was the perfect setting for their next viral video. Equipped with helmets, headlamps, and a GoPro strapped to Mark's chest, the two squeezed through a partially collapsed entrance, their voices echoing against the damp rock. The air was stale, thick with dust and an unsettling stillness. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became, as if the mine itself was swallowing sound. They navigated through rusted carts and broken tracks, their beams of light cutting through the pitch-black tunnel. 100 feet in, they stumbled upon something that made their stomachs churn. A miner's helmet, resting perfectly upright, its light long dead. The strange part? It looked almost new, untouched by time. As they pressed on, they found themselves in a cavernous chamber where the tunnel split into two paths. Daniel pointed toward the right tunnel, where an old wooden support beam had collapsed, half blocking the way. "That looks sketchy," he muttered. "Yeah, but the left tunnel has deeper tracks. Could mean something interesting down there," Mark suggested. Against their better judgment, they split up, planning to meet back in 5 minutes. Mark's camera captured his steady breath as he navigated the left path, his fingers trailing against the damp walls. Every so often, he called out to Daniel, expecting a response. Nothing, just his own voice bouncing back at him. Then, something else. A whisper, faint, barely audible, but distinct. It wasn't Daniel. The voice was deep, guttural, layered, like multiple people speaking at once. Mark froze, his pulse hammering. The whisper came again, closer this time, sending an unnatural chill down his spine. Heart pounding, Mark turned back. But the path ahead looked different. Was he imagining it? The rocks seemed to have shifted. The way out was gone. He ran forward, calling Daniel's name. His own voice was the only reply. Then he saw it. Footprints. Fresh ones, leading further into the darkness. And they weren't his. Mark's breathing turned ragged as he followed them, desperate to find Daniel. But with each step, the mine seemed to stretch, the tunnel extending unnaturally like something was leading him deeper. His flashlight flickered, then static. His GoPro screen cut to white noise, distorting his panicked breathing. The last frame before it died captured a shadow, a towering figure just beyond the beam of his flashlight, watching. Suddenly, Mark heard it. Daniel's voice, faint but real. He bolted toward it, scrambling over rocks and debris. Finally, he saw a distant glow, Daniel's flashlight. "Dude, what happened? I've been calling you for 10 minutes. Daniel's voice was tight with concern. Mark tried to explain, but words failed. He grabbed Daniel's arm. "We need to leave. Now." They retraced their steps, or at least they thought they did. The tunnel twisted, the walls seemed closer, and the very air felt alive with something unseen. Then, just ahead, the faint outline of the entrance. They burst into the open, gasping for air, the dawn breaking over the horizon. Neither spoke for a long time. When they reviewed the footage later, their blood ran cold. In the moments before Mark's camera cut out, a distorted whisper hissed through the speakers. "You shouldn't have come." The Blackwell mine was never mentioned in any historical records. No maps marked its location. And when they tried to return, the entrance was gone, as if it had never been there. Some places are abandoned for a reason. On November 12, 2018, experienced deep-sea diver and marine biologist Thomas Grayson embarked on what would become the most harrowing dive of his career. Known for his fearless exploration of underwater caves, Thomas had spent years mapping out uncharted territories deep beneath the ocean surface. But this time, his journey wasn't just about discovery. It was personal. 2 years earlier, his closest friend and fellow diver, Eric Vasquez, had gone missing during an ambitious descent into the Devil's Abyss, a notorious underwater sinkhole off the coast of Bermuda. Despite multiple search attempts, no trace of Eric had ever been found. Haunted by the unanswered questions, Thomas made it his mission to find out what had happened. Armed with state-of-the-art equipment and a carefully calculated dive plan, Thomas descended into the abyss, his heart pounding with both anticipation and dread. The deeper he went, the more the sunlight faded, until he was enveloped in total darkness, relying only on his high-powered dive light to navigate the treacherous terrain. As he reached a depth of 310 meters, a record-breaking depth for this location, his light caught something unnatural amid the jagged rocks. He moved closer, and his blood ran cold. It was a human figure, suspended in the water like a ghostly apparition. The body, still clad in a deteriorating wetsuit, was entangled in a cluster of rock formations. Thomas recognized the markings on the suit instantly. It was Eric. Fighting against his mounting fear, Thomas approached, inspecting the scene carefully. Eric's oxygen tanks were empty, and his dive computer was still attached to his wrist, its screen long since dead. But what sent chills through Thomas wasn't just the body. It was Eric's dive mask. The glass was shattered, and behind it, his face was frozen in an expression of sheer terror. Realizing he had already spent too much time at this depth, Thomas hurriedly attached a recovery line to Eric's gear. But as he tugged to free the body, something unexpected happened. Eric's arm moved. Thomas gasped, momentarily believing the impossible, but the truth was far worse. Eric's body, no longer anchored in place, began to drift upward slightly, causing the tangled lines to constrict and wrap around Thomas's own gear. Within seconds, he was ensnared, the very lifeline he had brought turning into a death trap. He struggled, but every frantic movement only made the situation worse. His breathing grew rapid, consuming his oxygen at an alarming rate. The edges of his vision blurred as nitrogen narcosis set in, clouding his judgment and slowing his reflexes. He reached for his dive knife, but his fingers fumbled clumsily. Then, in his fading consciousness, he saw something that nearly stopped his heart. Eric's mask had shifted slightly in the movement. Behind the cracked glass, his empty eye sockets stared back. His face was hollow, stripped of flesh by years of underwater decay. Yet somehow, Thomas felt as though the skull was watching him. His panic surged. With one last desperate effort, he sliced through the tangled lines and propelled himself upward. His dive watch blared warnings. He was ascending too fast, but he had no choice. His lungs burned, his vision darkened, and just before reaching the shallower depths where his support team was waiting, his body gave out. When he awoke, he was on the deck of the research vessel, oxygen mask pressed to his face. He had made it, but Eric's body had not. The dive team reviewed the footage from Thomas's head-mounted camera, analyzing every moment. They saw the struggle, the entanglement, and the escape. But then, something inexplicable appeared in the final frames. Just as Thomas severed the last line, there was movement behind Eric's drifting body. A shadow, deeper than the abyss itself, slipping silently back into the darkness.